At this point, let's step back and review array concatenation in Matlab. Remember that concatenation is the stacking of like objects in a rectangular array. Horizontal concatenation is for objects with the same number of rows, stacking them horizontally, while vertical concatenation is for objects with the same number of columns, stacking them vertically. In Matlab, there's a square bracket syntax for concatenation, which we use extensively. Horizontal concatenation is achieved with a square bracket construction and the objects separated by commas. Spaces is also allowed. And vertical concatenation uses the square bracket syntax with the objects separated by semicolons. The square brackets are so prevalent in some of the constructions we've used that we often display the concatenated arrays with square brackets. The square bracket syntax also allows for vertical and horizontal concatenation in one operation. Let's remember how that works. Here, the initial square bracket starts the stacking of the objects. Commas indicate horizontal concatenation, new columns. Semicolons indicate vertical concatenation, new rows. And finally, the closing square bracket terminates the concatenation, creating a new object of the same class. This works for almost all types of objects, including cell arrays. I've written almost because arrays of function handles are not allowed, and hence function handles cannot be concatenated. Apart from that, though, the only restriction in all of these concatenation operations is that the row and column dimensions must be compatible. Before we do this on cell arrays, let's take a short quiz reviewing some of the concatenation ideas that we've learned in the past. Let's now start concatenating some cell arrays using the two additional cell arrays that you just created in the quiz. Let's concatenate the three 1x1 containers horizontally into a new variable called ClassInfo. Here we concatenate the container containing the name, the container containing the student ID, and the container containing the scores. I've used the square bracket syntax. I could have also used the horizoncat command. And what that does is it creates a 1x3 array of containers. Indeed, class of ClassInfo is cell, and the size of ClassInfo is 1x3. Let's try this in Matlab. Start by recreating the cell arrays just as a reminder of what they were. CNAME contained the character string Jack Jackson, SID contained the student ID number, and scores was a 1x5 array of test scores wrapped in a container. Now we can stack these horizontally using the square bracket concatenation command. We stack the container CNAME next to the container that contains the SID, next to the container that contains the scores. And we terminate this horizontal concatenation with another square bracket. The class of ClassInfo is cell. The size of ClassInfo is 1x3 because it's a 1x3 array of containers. Let's visualize the variable ClassInfo. Here is the first container and the contents of the first container. Here's the second container and the contents of the second container. And finally, here's the third container and the contents of the third container. Notice that while it is a 1x3 array of containers, each container contains a very different type of object. The first container's contents are a 1x12 character array. The second container's contents is a 1x1 double array. And finally, the third container's contents is a 1x5 double array. Indeed, we see, though, that ClassInfo is a 1x3 array of containers, and each of the containers has contents. It's worth noting that the way we're depicting the cell arrays here, shown inside their containers, is slightly different than the manner in which the display of cell arrays is done in Matlab. If we display ClassInfo in the Matlab command window, this is what we get. Notice how it's a little different than what I have at the top of the slide. At the top of the slide, I've clearly delineated the containers with curly brackets. It's exactly how we place the objects in the containers. The display in Matlab doesn't show that explicitly. It only shows the contents arranged in a rectangular collection that's consistent with the array dimension. So be careful when you're printing out cell arrays in the Matlab command window. Sometimes they might look a little bit different than what you were expecting, but if you think about it carefully and remember that Matlab does not show that outer level of containers, then you'll be able to understand what the object is.